Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our next episode. For those of you that finished up Social Security last week, Dominic, thanks for joining me again as we have another very important topic to cover.
Hey, Jeff, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right, so we wrapped up what I thought was a great discussion. For those of you attending, haven't listened to the Social Security retirement planning episode, go back and check that one out. There were some great tips on there. And today, we're going to talk about group benefits and the cost and the alternatives, which I think a lot of times take a back seat in retirement planning, but could have a major impact on your net your net income in retirement. So, you ready to get into this?
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's go.
All right, so I broke it down to 4 categories, and this is based on the questions we get all the time. So the big one right now is what to do about group health as somebody gets ready to look at retirement. So I know you talk about this a lot with your clients.
I do, yeah. So I'll start off by saying that at least at the federal level, I know this because I do a lot of work in the federal level, Jeff, as you know. Their health program is really good. They have 2 major choices, main choices, Blue Cross and Blue Shield and Aetna. But yeah, people who are approaching their retirement, get concerned if they're a married couple and there's a spouse involved. They of course want to continue that coverage, that group health coverage, to the spouse for the rest of the spouse's life. And they certainly can do that, but there's some restrictions in that they'll need to sign up for the survivor's benefit on their FERS annuity in order for them to carry on that coverage for their spouse. Most people aren't willing to do that because, for you listeners, if you're listening, the survivor benefit is not a very good deal at all for your FERS annuity. And we could talk about that in greater length when we connect at some point in the future. But the alternative to that is the spouse goes on Medicare, and we help them out with a Medicare supplement policy, which covers, everything the Medicare does not cover. And they're very affordable policies. They're a couple $100 a month or less, depending. And then the employee, the federal employee, just keeps their coverage for the rest of their life, basically, and they get the single payout for their FERS annuity.
Which, how much on average? I know that this depends on the age and your vesting and everything, but what percentage on average is that increase the monthly retirement annuity?
So you mean if they don't go with the joint payout and they go with the
Right.
single?
Right.
Yeah, so
Just on average.
Yeah, I'll do it the opposite. So if they decide to go with the joint, then they're going to take approximately an immediate cut of 25% of what they would have normally gotten. And that's a big cut for something that you're expecting to last for the rest of your life, right? Can you picture Social Security calling you tomorrow and say, "Hey Jeff, we thought you were going to get $3,000 a month, but we're actually only going to send you $2,250. We're going to cut it 25%."
Right.
That would be a big, big tragic thing. But the worst of it is that if the federal employee passes, and it works like this in the public sector as well, in a lot of places with their pensions, if the employee predeceases the spouse gets 50% of that 75%. So it's an even bigger cut too. So it's not a good option. You don't want to take it if you don't have to. There's much better options.
I wasn't aware of that. If you think through it, I mean, you see the stats and everything, but when you think through it, you don't think about it getting 50% of the 75%. I think logical thinking would be I get 50% of the 100%, but then you bring up a really good point there.
Yeah, there's a better option. Again, we'll get into this at some point in the future, I'm sure, but it's called the Pension Maximization Program. And it's something where it costs you way less out of pocket than losing 25 and 50%, and it lasts you for the rest of your life. So something we could talk about in the future.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of situations, and that kind of leads into our second group benefit discussion. But I've seen a lot of times that using that pension max strategy, you use life insurance, right? So that let's talk about that group benefit.
Yeah, so that's the primary way to do it. But so with federal employees, I'm just going to say with all employees, back in the 80s, when the recession hit and most companies did away with pensions. Well, guess what? They did away with really expensive permanent life insurance policies for their employees as well, and they switched everything over to group life plans, offering term life insurance, which is the least expensive kind of life insurance. Problem is with the FEGLI plan, we'll talk about that for just a second, for the federal employees, people don't realize, number one, once they hit age 65 or at their retirement age, then most of their options go away, their option B coverage, their option C coverage, option A. They just slowly dwindle away over a 4-year period after they retired. And they walk out with nothing, basically. And then their basic coverage, they lose basically 75% of that. So they end up, paying all this money and all these premiums for all these years, expecting to walk out of there with a couple $100,000 in death benefit, and they walk out with either nothing or just 25% of what they thought they're going to have. And that's a shock to every federal employee I've ever spoken with before.
So it's part of your offering. We talk about retirement consultations, and we'll get in at the end here how to get a hold of Dominick. How do you analyze that for let's say a federal employee is 5 years from retirement? What are some of the alternatives that you suggest?
Yeah, so most of the people that we speak to, usually they either keep just their basic life coverage because it's very, very inexpensive, but they take all that money they are paying into their options and they cancel the option A, B, or C, and we help them out with a permanent life insurance plan that doesn't go away at 65. It lasts till age 121, actually. And unlike FEGLI, where the payments increase every 5 years, the permanent life insurance plans rates are guaranteed to never increase from the day the policy is issued. So
I always
yeah,
make the comparison of renting versus owning in a property. Is that fair assessment?
I think that's a pretty fair assessment. Yeah. But the most compelling reason why a lot of people do it, and this will segue into our next section probably, Jeff, is for the what's called living benefits. Life insurance companies came out with living benefits around a little over a decade ago or more. And what it means is nowadays you do not have to die to get access to your benefit. If you're alive, but you're terminally ill, critically ill, or chronically ill, then you can tap into the living benefit portion of your policy and get up to 90% or sometimes even more of your death benefit paid to you while you're alive. So it really acts like a long-term care supplement policy for them as well. And they love that idea.
Well, let's talk about that because that's a subject that's coming up more and more. At all levels of government, there is the option, mostly through John Hancock, I think, of adding the group benefit of long-term care. So what do you see out there in the long-term care world? And I do know that life insurance companies tie in that benefit quite well in certain planning situations to the life insurance, adding what you call living benefit. Could you get into that a little more detailed?
Yeah, sure. So traditionally, long-term care policies, they're known for being very, very expensive, very costly, very, very restrictive. They only pay out the benefit for usually a maximum of 5 years. So after 5 years, if somebody's in a nursing home, they got to scramble to figure, things out. Um, and then there's the problem that what if you got long-term care insurance at age 50 and you died quietly in your sleep at age 85 and you paid 35 years of premiums all of those years and you never used it. So that's a big consideration for a lot of people out there. Gee, if I don't use it, I don't want to lose it. I want to get some of that money back. And the way we do that nowadays is you're exactly right, Jeff. We incorporate, life insurance companies incorporate the long-term care benefits right into life insurance policies. So you can tap into those in case you don't pass away, but you get, and you don't even have to be really critically ill. You can have just a chronic illness, just can't perform what they call 2 of your 6 activities of daily living, and you could very simply and easily file a claim. Get a note from your doctor about your illness. We submit it to the company. They do some paperwork, underwrite it, and boom, you get your benefit not too long down the line.
And the final group benefit that ties into long-term care, but for those that may not be a couple years from retirement, is the disability. I get, it's a question that's coming up all the time. Let me make it clear that, especially for the nursing community out there, if you're a federal employee, you do not have disability insurance. And if you're at another nonprofit or work for a university, you need to review the long-term disability plans and compare them. So, Dominic, you advise your clients on how to position in planning outside of just their sick leave. And I think you can take your vacation time, or you can take your pay in some circumstances, but how do you handle that issue with your client base?
Yeah, so I mean, the nurses, obviously, you folks are on the front lines these days. You see what's going on way more than we do because we're not in the hospitals every day like you are. So this is a very serious case these days, and a lot of my nurse clients are concerned about short-term disability, and some of them don't want to use their their leave time or their paid time off or their sick leave or whatever. They want to accumulate that so they can get that back when they retire someday as a kind of a bonus to retiring. So yeah, I mean, short-term disability has become a very, very hot topic these days, and that's certainly something that we can and we have helped people with planning that process out so they can take care of themselves and their families in the event of a calamity and they're not able to work for a lengthy period of time of up to 2 years.
Well, and that brings up a point that we need to mention, is that a lot of times people won't search out disability or life insurance because they feel like they may have a health condition that would preclude them from getting a decent rate or coverage at all. That's not the case. Both on the federal, state, and local levels, you need to get with Dominic because there are options regardless of your health. So we don't want to guarantee anything, but group coverage, we know at the federal level and some state and local programs, you can get short-term disability, which means you would be covered up to a certain percentage of your income for a year, and on a guarantee issue basis. So I think that's very important. Also with the life insurance, a lot of times we see federal employees specifically that keep their FEGLI, the Federal Employee Group Life Insurance options, in place, and are paying a lot of money because they fear that, let's say they have diabetes and they try to get individual coverage before. Give a Dominic, there are alternatives out there that may make more sense for you and save you some money. I wanted to give that plug because I just see too many times people get to retirement, they've been paying for, a multiple salary when they didn't have to, and you can't get the money back once it's, you can't go back and say, oh, I made a mistake 5 years, maybe that's $10,000 over the last 5 years they paid into something that they could have saved money on and they didn't use. So that gets back to your point about you got to look at all these benefits for the additional living benefits like you talked about that are attached to some of these products, because I think a lot of times we don't look at our benefits and our planning holistically.
Yeah, I tell people, listen, it doesn't cost you anything with us anyway to get a second opinion. So if you have questions about any of this, short-term disability, long-term disability, life insurance, anything like that, reach out to us. Jeff will give you our information in the end, but reach out to us and we'll give you a second opinion, an honest second opinion. And if the situation you have and the program you're involved in is excellent, we're going to be honest and just say, listen, this is great. Just stick with this. And here's why we think you should. But if it's not, we're going to tell you that as well.
Well, and I don't think there's a better time to review your benefits than now. I say that, I've said that a lot recently, because there are alternatives that may make your situation better, and we don't know what the future holds. And Dominick is well served to help in all aspects of your career, early, mid, pre-retirement, and into retirement. But we're finding that a lot of times these benefits tie into your retirement planning. They're part of your budget. They're part of your expenses as you move into this next phase. And I think sometimes they're overlooked because the advisor may be too narrow on their focus of just working with the retirement income, but the expenses are just as important. And I want to make that point. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
all right. Well, that's great information. Thank you. I picked up a couple things that I wasn't aware of that maybe I'd heard in the past, but I'd forgotten. So if I'm picking it up, that means the audience is also getting some good information. So thank you for sharing.
You're very welcome, Jeff. It's my pleasure.
All right. So let's talk about how to get a hold of us and Dominick. For federal employees, go to fedchecklist.com. Fedchecklist.com. There is a PDF workbook, retirement workbook, worksheet, and budget that we think is important for you to have. Complimentary, go there, download it. You can also put questions and comments for Dominick in there. Let us know you're a nurse, you attended our podcast series, or get it to Dominick. If you are at the state or local university, nonprofit, go to publicpensionchecklist.com and download a free report on your pension. There's pension report cards there, handouts on what the 10 steps you need to be reviewing before retiring. You can also put questions and comments in there. Let us know you attended the podcast. We'll get it to Dominick. Give us a call, 888-545-8840, 888-545-8840 if you have questions or comments, like set up a retirement consultation. And then Dominick, give everybody your website. They can go directly to you also.
Yeah, we just got a new website up and running this week. So it's caiatifinancial.com. That's spelled CAIATI financial.com.
So check it out. All right, good session today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it. Look forward to our next one. We're going to talk about beneficiary forms. We're going to cover some of that.
Well, that's important because, it doesn't sound like an exciting topic until, you're on your last breath and you realize that your thrift savings plan or your 403B or 401k is still going to your first wife, who maybe you're not married to anymore, or that your children are still on your will and they're in their 30s. This is one of these organizational subjects that you better have your house in order before that time comes, because it could make a big difference in what's going to happen to everything you've accumulated. So yeah, beneficiaries, how they tie into your will, estate planning, your 403B, TSP, your pension options. So those all need to be coordinated. And you even mentioned, I just thought of this, what about your sick pay? You have to assign, do you need to assign a beneficiary to that also? If you pass away and you've accumulated, like Dominick talked about, your annual leave or sick pay, you need to assign, you may want to be using that as a retirement bonus. You can add that into your retirement. but you need to assign a beneficiary to that also. So we're going to get into details of how to make sure you do that correctly, and we'll be back next week. So, all right, this concludes our session. Thanks again, Dominic. I'll talk to you next week.
Okay, Jeff, thanks.